Hello everybody. Hello everyone. This is Dr. Willow Ariala coming to you to talk to you about research, assessment, and theories of family violence. This is Barnett Chapter 2, and I think it's unfortunate that this chapter includes both theories and research because they're both pretty large, complex, deep topics, but that's what the authors did. So I want to cover a few items. One is that I think research is the most important aspect of this class, of this book, of this topic, because research is the foundation of what we know, how we learn what we know, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't as far as treatment and practice and prevention goes. And so I think this is the research aspect is probably the most important in this class, in any class. Research makes up every single subject that you will ever study. And there is, of course, good research, meaning it is well done, is valid, is reliable, and that sort of thing. And there is bad research that's been done poorly for a variety of reasons. Research is complex. Human behaviors are complex. So put both of those together and you've got a lot of complexity, and we'll be touching on the ideas, getting a broad overview of research, and so we're not going to go very deep into it in this class. I hope if you are interested that you do take a research methods class, that you do your own research project, and that those two things combined give you the best idea of what research is about and how difficult it is to do good research. Anyway, so I think this is a really, really important subject and topic. So the authors of the text talk about different types of research, different fields, different subjects that evaluate domestic violence, and domestic violence is definitely a cross-cultural field or topic of study, and it's studied by many fields, people in many fields. In my field, social work, I conducted research with battered women who were residing in shelters, and so my research had a social work kind of focus, but it also included some sociological aspects. So anyway, and lawyers also research this topic. The author Barnett, the authors mentioned legal research. I also took a domestic violence in the law class when I was in my doctorate program, and learned about domestic violence from a legal perspective and research on it from a legal perspective. So it's a topic that obviously knows no boundaries. So people from many areas study it. Now there are different theories so that attempt to explain why domestic violence or family violence occurs, why child abuse occurs, and because human behaviors are so complex, there are many theories that people have promulgated to address why abuse occurs, and theories can also be complex. We can call a theory a behavioral theory, but that is still a broad kind of concept, behavioralism or behavior theory. So human behaviors are complex. There's no one overarching, this is what causes domestic violence or any other human behavior for that matter. Because humans are complex and complicated. There can be many aspects, many things going on in a human that would stimulate or trigger, or I don't like to use the word cause. That word is in research is difficult to prove. Cause, that one thing causes one other thing. That is very difficult to prove. But why do humans abuse? What are some of the triggers, or what are some of the issues, topics, things that are behind why humans do yucky things to other humans? So Barnett divided the theories into macro theories, so societal level perspectives, and micro theories, individual level perspectives, and they all can play a role, or only one or two aspects can play a role, or theories can play a role in explaining why someone is abusing. So it may not just be one theory that can explain it. Theories, a lot of people have difficulty understanding what a theory is. A theory is an abstract concept that helps explain, in this case, some sort of human behavior. There can be mathematical theories that don't have anything to do with humans, but in this case we're talking about theories that attempt to explain human behavior. Theories don't do anything, theories don't cause anything, theories don't say anything, theories don't believe anything. Theories are something that humans use as an attempt to explain, to analyze, to understand, to reason, to look at a particular human behavior, in this class, domestic violence and child abuse, from a particular lens or perspective. So as an example, if you are a libertarian, you're going to view the world with a libertarian perspective. It doesn't mean that there are only libertarians, or that there's only a libertarian way to do things, or that libertarians are only one, conglomerate, and there's no difference or variety or anything in a libertarian perspective. We can make some sort of assumptions about somebody who's looking at the world from a libertarian perspective. Or if you're a feminist, then you may have a particular perspective that a non-feminist has about a topic like domestic violence and child abuse. So theories are lenses or perspectives that humans utilize to analyze, understand, evaluate, those sorts of things, human behavior. So they're lens or perspective. And researchers tend to buy into or think that a particular theory has more merit based on their experiences, based on their own research, based on their way of looking at the world. And so people may sort of attach themselves to a particular theory because they think it has more explanatory power than another theory, or it's a bias that they have. So, theories are complex, humans are complex, but theories are a lens or a perspective. And there are many theories that have been proposed based on evidence and research to try to explain why domestic violence and child abuse occur. So Barnett goes into, not detail, but some goes into a look at different theories and how they attempt to explain domestic violence. A lot of people, and some of you addressed it in the first week, think that alcohol and drugs are a reason why people abuse others, and as some of you discovered, and if you read chapter 2, you'll discover that that is not the case. Alcohol and drugs are merely an excuse most of the time, 99% of the time, for someone to say that's why they hit someone else. Oh, I did it because I was drinking. Well, research has shown, and people have observed, that if that same drunk person was in front of their boss or someone else who may have more power over them, then they would not abuse that person. And so people have busted that myth. So alcohol and drugs may help stimulate or trigger or encourage, or however you want to use that word. It may encourage someone to be abusive, but it's not a cause of abuse. The authors discuss the relationship between poverty and abuse. There's been a lot of research on poor people and violence. Not as much has been done on wealthy people, and I hope there is more that is done in the near future. And so they have explanations of different theoretical perspectives. So many people want to know, why does domestic violence and child abuse occur, and these theories are attempts explaining why domestic violence and abuse occurs. Again, they are not all going to be, there may be one theoretical perspective that can explain some particular groups or individuals' behaviors, but not all of them. There are always exceptions, again, because humans are complex, and theories are generalities more so than specifics. And then the authors go into, how do we learn about domestic violence and child abuse? What are sources of data, and what are the pros and cons of those sources of data? What are some of the issues that we need to look at when we are designing a research study and trying to get answers to questions? And so one of the issues that we looked at in Chapter 1, and they talk about in Chapter 2 as well, is that the different definitions of family violence and child abuse and child neglect. So that is a challenge. What is battering? The definition of these concepts is not easy to pin down. It's there, and not everyone agrees on one definition. So this makes research challenging. But we can still agree to a few different definitions, and we can define it in our own research and tell the readers why we defined family violence, domestic violence, or child abuse in a particular way. And then there are issues of sampling, comparing groups, doing longitudinal studies, family violence scales and measurement issues. So there are different measurements. The conflict tactics scale is one of the most common ones used, not the only one by any means. I'm not too sure why Barnett focused on CTS, besides maybe it's one of the more popular scales or measurement tools used. But they go into detail on the conflict tactics scale. It's definitely been around for quite a while, and so that's another reason why people like to use it, because it's been around, it's been utilized. People think the CTS is a well-documented, valid, and reliable scale. But there are many other scales that can be used. I use different scales in my research than the conflict tactics scale. So, but they go into detail about this one because they say it's the most widely used. So it's important to know what scales are being used and whether or not they in themselves are valid and reliable. And again, this has to do with testing procedures for scales or measurements. And there are lots of other kind of like sub-issues in research and scales and design. For example, cultural issues. When I conducted my research, one of the things I learned is that people tend to be more honest if they are being interviewed by people who they think that are more like themselves. So in my research, I hired other women to interview women of different ethnic backgrounds than myself. So my research consisted of I was in Texas at the time, so the Hispanic population and African American population and white population were the three largest, and so I interviewed those, but I hired other women to try to get more honest responses, so that people, they feel more comfortable when they're interacting with someone who seems more like them. So those are some of the many issues that have to be considered when you're conducting research, and also when you're reading a research report. What did the researchers consider and what did they not, and why didn't they consider those or include these different kinds of components, like cultural issues and the scales that they use and the design and things like that. And then the authors talk about practice, policy, and prevention issues. So when we conduct research, usually there's a goal of trying to figure out either describing something or figuring out if something works or doesn't work. And so the authors are suggesting that practice and policy be informed, as I agree it should be, by good research. So practice, counseling, interventions, those sorts of things ideally are created based on good research. And then policy implications. So what does research help us learn or do or implement as far as state or federal policy, laws or legislation regarding domestic violence and child abuse? And so, many people have this idea, let's just pass a law about something. Well, a lot needs to go into consideration. A lot of things need to be considered before we pass a law, ideally. So, is that information that we're using to pass a law based on good evidence and things like that? So, we have a lot of laws on our books, so we want to be really careful in, sort of having a knee-jerk reaction of, I don't like that, so let's pass a law. Well, perhaps that's not the best way to address a social issue or a social problem. There may be many other ways, such as prevention, to address social issues. So again, the chapter is very broad and will be integrating many things that are in Chapter 2 throughout the rest of the course. So you'll be re-evaluating, re-looking at the theories and research as we continue. And we're going to be looking at research on domestic violence and child abuse. And so this chapter gives you a good foundation in determining, using your critical thinking skills, if that research was well done or not. Okay, so hopefully this was a little useful to you, this video, and discussing some of the major issues to be thinking about in Chapter 2. And look forward to your discussions. Thank you for your time and attention. Aloha.